What I've found is within every scholarship community among the winners, there's always a crop of students who did not believe that they would ever win it. So don't take yourself out of the running. The selectivity you can't control. Don't worry about things that are beyond your control. You have to align your experiences and your vision for your career and the change that you want to make with what this program is looking for.
Hey everyone, my name's Will Geiger and welcome back to another episode of Office Hours. I'm incredibly excited about today's guest, Kiya Jones, who's a director at the Ron Brown Scholar Program. And one really cool thing about Kiya is that she was also a Ron Brown Scholar as well, which I think just lends her a wonderful perspective on the specific scholarship program for students. So welcome, Kiya.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. You know, I've been a listener, but this is my first time participating in any podcast. And so I'm so grateful to be here to talk about a subject that I love and hopefully will provide some information that's actually helpful and actionable for students and families.
No, and you hit the nail on the head. That's what we want to provide, context and insight, but ultimately make that super actionable for students and families. So, I guess as we get started, I'd love to, if you could take me back to the beginning, and I would love to hear a little bit about your own admissions and scholarship search, with an eye towards learning about the Ron Brown Scholar Program and becoming a scholar yourself.
Sure. I'm happy to share that. So currently I serve as the director of our Guided Pathway Support Program, which is our free college access program for African American high school students and seniors. It's virtual. And so I counsel students and families year round about the college and scholarship application process. But for me, this process started way back in the 90s, a lifetime ago. I'm specifically dating myself. I'm a first generation college student. I come from a background of deep poverty in the deep South. But my mother always told me, if you get good grades, if you work hard, if you show people what you know and what you can do, I can't pay for you to go to college, but you can go to college. And I believe that. She told me that from when I was as young as 7. And this is a woman who never got the opportunity to attend college herself, who grew up in public housing. And so by the time I got to high school, I went to a library and got a physical book on scholarships and just started looking for any information that I could find. Because we were low income, we moved around a lot. So I attended 5 different high schools. And so at the last high school that I attended for my senior year, I was always in my counselor's office looking for opportunities and looking for scholarships. And way back then in the 90s, you had to physically mail in applications for scholarships. And so she had actually gotten a brochure about the Ron Brown Scholarship from a neighboring high school. Another counselor told her that they wouldn't have many eligible students at her school. And so she gave her the brochure. And my counselor just offered it to me as, on a whim. She said, I know you're applying. You should apply to this. But when we read the brochure in more detail, the first thing we saw was $40,000. Oh my God, we couldn't imagine, as someone who was from a family that was on public assistance, and we, were unhoused, $40,000 it may as well have been $1 trillion. But then when we read the brochure closer, it said that they would, if you make it through the semifinalist round, they would invite 20 students out to interview as finalists in Washington, D.C., but they would only select 10. My counselor and I literally laughed at the idea that I would get this. We went to, my high school had definitely had some challenges. But we thought, why not? It's just something, just get as many applications as you can out there. It's a numbers game. And so when I first got the semifinalist notification, I thought it was a fluke. And then once I received the invitation to be invited out to D.C., I could not believe it. It was one of the first times that I had ever been on a plane. My mother had never even been on a plane. And when I got there and I landed, I was surrounded by these students who were just absolutely amazing. Back then, I did not know that African American students went to Harvard. I just didn't. And here we had students who had already been accepted or who had applied, and it was like alien to me. We had another person who was invited out in my class had scored perfect fives on like 6 different advanced placement exams. My high school only offered one exam, advanced placement exam, and I was lucky that I scored a 3 on it. And so the idea that I would win this scholarship seemed even more foreign as I was interviewing for it. I remember because during the selection weekend interviews, it's a panel interview. So they're community leaders, judges, lawyers, medical doctors, professionals, foundation leaders who are all interviewing you and who are treating you like you are the most important person in the world, who want to understand your life view. And I didn't know what my life view was. I was still developing it.
Mhm.
And so I remember trying to cram and study the newspaper that was delivered to my headroom and trying to memorize the phrase Slobodan Milosevic because his name was in the news a lot, just in case they asked me a question, political question. And soon I realized I didn't need any of that, right? Um, they wanted to understand my experiences, what pushed me to take as many honors classes as I could, what pushed me to do as many community service projects as I had, what pushed me to believe that being this unhoused, student who wore the same donated clothes to her debate competitions every weekend and to her math competitions every weekend, what pushed me to do those things. And so, I just explained to them that I felt like I didn't have a choice. I felt like I was trapped in this bubble of poverty and I did not see a way out. And everybody around me was trapped in this bubble of poverty. And, I wanted to be the person to understand how we became trapped in that bubble and maybe how we could help each other to pierce it. And when that night after we finished our interviews, all of the 20s finalists were all hanging out together. We were playing board games and laughing and listening to music, all understanding that the hammer was going to fall the next day or the next day,
Mhm.
and there only 10 of us would get it, but we had already bonded. You have these students who understand what it's like to be the only African American student in your honors class. There was another student there who had also been mistakenly, when she transferred schools, had been placed in special needs courses because, like I had, my counselors at one high school just assumed that I was special needs because they hadn't gotten my transcript yet from one of my old high schools. And so I was languishing in these classes for, about 2 months, an entire grading period. And we were making fun of each other's accents. I had never met people from these places I'd only seen on TV from New York and Chicago, and laughing at how they spoke and, comparing notes about music and those kinds of things. I literally had to wear borrowed clothes from my grandmother that weekend because I didn't have clothes to wear. And so when we were all hanging out in the hotel room, just having fun after the interviews, the executive director of the program and CEO, Mike Mallory, walked in, and he, gave a few brief remarks, and he said, "Kiya, I'd like to speak with you." And I felt like everybody knew, okay, I guess these are how we're doing the cuts, and Kiya is going to be the first person to be cut. And so, at first when he said my name, I thought, okay, this is it. But, I was heartbroken, but I refused to cry because I had met all of these incredible people. I had already bonded with so many people. And I was going to take back home these stories of these students that had done these amazing and incredible things. And so I was happy to go home. I had already been enriched just in those few days of being exposed to people like this. Um, and so I expected him to say, "So we're going to send you home, but thank you for coming out." But he said, "I want you to know that you won this scholarship." And I'm sorry. And it was life changing. He said, "Actually, you all won. And I want you to stop thinking of yourself as a poor person." He said, "You're a part of a community now. a community with resources that wants to help you. And this was way back in 99. So I got the privilege of walking back into that room and telling everyone that we all got it. Now, in
Wow.
the crowd, we didn't know it then. There was a future Pulitzer Prize winner in my class. There was a future CEO. There were engineers, people who are now in senior positions at Boeing and these amazing places. And we didn't know it then. And it was this program that helped us to get there. And it's really not about the money is great. You know, you can't, that's undebatable. It's not arguable that the money is great, but having someone there who is willing to walk with you from the time when you are 17 through your 20s, through your 30s, into your early careers, you are trying to figure it out. And to say, we believe in you. We believe in that person that we met. We know what you're trying to do, even if you haven't completely figured it out. And we're going to support you. And I can tell you now, 40 years later, that that's exactly what they did. You know, I was a student who earned more than $1 million in college scholarships because I was so low income. Um, but most of those programs gave me a check and said goodbye and good luck and just kind of left me there. It was this program who picked up the phone, called me, checked on me, sent me my first computer when they realized I didn't have a computer. And it was one of those giant computers with the giant backs that took up a quarter of my dorm room. And I loved it. I invited everybody on my hallway to come and look at it. You know, I cherished that computer. Um, and, you know, they've introduced me to mentors, introduced people who constantly challenge me. They've given me the opportunity to build this college access program to help other students navigate the college application process because they understand how difficult it is. And so I feel like that's the power of the Ron Brown Scholar Program. You know, most scholarships focus on the dollars and let's get you into college. But the Ron Brown Scholar Program, when we write that we support students into college and beyond, the focus is really on the beyond.
Hmm.
And that's what sets this scholarship apart.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. It's such a wonderful, wonderful story and such a testament to the program. And just that must have been an incredible moment just to share with your I guess people who a few minutes before you thought you were competing with.
Right,
But like yeah. And just be able to share that. That's very, very, very cool that they made just I'm sure just saw how impressive the cohort of applicants was, and just not just to avoid the you know leaving someone out who's like leaving people out who are so deserving. So that's
right.
just very, very cool.
Hmm.
um no, and I think you're hitting on such an important thing, just as far as that. I think sometimes in the industry, like the term wraparound support is used, but just some of the other things that scholarship programs are doing to help students, just because I think it is, college is a launching pad, but it definitely doesn't. I think there's complexity to finding internships and thinking about graduate school and jobs. I think especially now, when we're all aware of the kind of the state of like entry level hiring and student debt, and students just these decisions are very, very high stakes. And I think sometimes students are just not equipped, particularly kids who maybe they're coming from background where they don't have like family members or mentors who had gone to college and worked in certain professions. And like I think sometimes it's just like it's the like, kind of like this like hidden knowledge that you just like don't even know like what to ask or what you might not know.
Right, right. And I feel like that's what sometimes people undervalue that perspective, that there could be social and life deficits, not just in terms of soft skills, but just also just in understanding the way that the world works that can become structural barriers to professional development. And it's so tricky. It's such a tricky thing to navigate. And so that's why when scholarship programs say that they offer wraparound services, you know, you want to make sure that it's a scholarship program that is taking the time to get to know you, to check in with you. Those, little 15-minute Zooms, meeting for lunch where you don't really have an agenda, just a check in call. Through the years, they add up. Right. And so the
Mhm.
program gets a sense of who you are. And so then they can tell you why you did great in terms of landing that internship at Goldman, but maybe why you haven't gotten an offer yet, to help you
Mhm.
understand the culture at Goldman. Or if you're thinking about going to graduate school and you may be choosing a path that's harder for you. And so that's what I love about the attention to detail when it comes to those wraparound services in the Ron Brown Scholar Program. Every week we have a staff meeting, and one of the first thing that we talk about on the agenda are our current scholars. Who's doing well, who could use some mental health supports, who submitted applications for this fellowship, which mentors that we connect them to help them with the application process, who's still interviewing for jobs, who could use a mock interview, who needs someone to review their medical school application essays, those kinds of questions. And
Mhm.
so I feel like being scholar centered is one of our assets, and also collaborating with other programs. Other programs are doing these amazing things. And I feel like it's a testament to the Ron Brown Scholar Program that we have so many allies and colleagues and friends and who network with us and who are thought partners with us, at KIP, at Jack and Cook, at Coca-Cola, at Brian Cameron, helping us to understand their approach to certain problems and helping us to think about what we can do um, to provide better supports for our students. Because oftentimes the students that we serve are overlapping. And so, I feel like I actually lament that situation because, working with high school students, I think it's great that some students get, accepted into, all of the top scholarship programs. But I also work with those students who may have only been semifinalists in some, or who have gaps in their financial aid offers. And I wish that there was, more diversification in terms of who these scholarships are awarded to, so that a ton of dollars aren't funneled into a student who's high achieving and who's earned it, but who may not necessarily be able to use all of those dollars because of
Mhm.
scholarship displacement. And so I wish that, those students, there was an opportunity for scholarship programs to look beyond, some of their eligibility criteria, to see different metrics of success that, may not be consistent with what we're used to, untraditional metrics of success, so that we can spread those honors and those scholarship dollars around.
Yeah, no, that's I think that's a really, really great point. I think is yeah, a really interesting thing for, listeners out there to think about. To shift gears a little bit, I'm curious from the Ron Brown Scholar Program, and this is a kind of a common question since we'll always ask about like scholarship programs. Like, what are you looking for? What attributes does a good fit candidate have?
Mhm.
And then going beyond that, how do I best showcase this in my application? So I'm just curious how you think about that in your seat right now.
I love this question. So we are looking for, of course, the eligibility criteria. You have to be high achieving. These are just the bare eligibility criteria that you'll find on the website. So you have to be high achieving. You have to demonstrate financial need, and you have to have a commitment to community service. Right? Those are our eligibility criteria. But if you look at the kind of the subtext of those things, I feel like the selection committee is looking for those students who have done the most with the least. Leadership looks different in different contexts. So it's not always the student who holds the valedictorian position. It's not always the student, who has scored perfect fives on every AP exam that they've sat for. Those are
Mhm.
great. And we certainly have Ron Brown scholars who have accomplished those things. But it's also those students who really didn't have time for extracurricular activities because they are from a single parent household and they they have to take care of their special needs sibling. Or it's those students, we even have scholars who, maybe when they started high school, they did not take school seriously. And so their transcript has blemishes. Maybe there's D's, maybe there's even an F. But then later they found a subject that they love, and they went out into the world and they cold emailed every internship they could possibly find, every professor, got a ton of rejection, but then they got that one opportunity and they took off. Right. So their GPA may be low, but they've shown persistence,
Hmm.
and they've shown focus and drive. There's another student who I got to participate in this student's selection interview. And this student was high achieving, but also noticed that there were a lot of teenage mothers at her high school. And she noticed that in her county and in her city, there weren't really resources that helped those teenage mothers to understand where to go. And so she built an app for minor mothers to let them know all of the resources. Here's where you start. Here's where you find community. Here's where you find resources. And it spread, throughout her town. So it shows that, show us that we want to see that you're high achieving. But what's most important, we want to see how you are using your time and talents to uplift others. That's the Ron Brown Scholar Program ethos. Show us how you are leaving the ladder down. There are stories of Ron Brown scholars who, didn't have access to a laptop at their high school because their family couldn't afford laptops, and they noticed that their friends were in the same situation. And so they figured out how to build laptops using Raspberry Pi. And so then they started building them and just giving them to their friends. They could have charged, but they didn't. They just started giving them to their friends. That's the kind of people that we are looking for. The people who see needs in their community, however big, however small. And even if they, have to navigate challenges of funding or not having the subject matter expertise or not having a network or the guidance to help them to address the problem, they use the resources that they have to address it. That's what we're looking for. That's what we mean by leadership. You don't have to be perfect, but show us your plan. Help us to see what you've been given and how you've used that to help others. And if this scholarship program invests in the startup that is you,
Hmm.
what will be the return on that investment in 10 years, 20 years, etc.? How will you help others?
No, I love that. And I think sometimes students just think that it's all like GPA or test
Right.
scores. And, I think it hopefully leads to some introspection on like how, or maybe, for younger students, like thinking about this, just another, great reason for taking, initiative and trying to make an impact in your school or the communities that you're a part of.
Hmm.
Um, I know that with another question we've been getting a lot on, and curious to get your thoughts is around AI just becoming more prevalent in both admissions and scholarship applications. And I'm curious what the Ron Brown Scholar Program's current policy is on AI in the process.
Right, right. So, on our application, we have all applicants sign a certification statement that says that all of the ideas and information that they've shared in their application are their own. And so we expect you to bring your authentic self, which means, your ideas, your challenges, your vision for how the world works. And, there's truth to that old axiom that you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all the time. Our applications go through so many reviews, through so many stakeholders, and through teams of people and through individuals that eventually AI usage outs itself. And so, because we expect, because our community is so intimate and intense, we want to understand a person's, experiences, and we want to understand their vision. It's really, it's getting easier and easier to tell when the work that they present in their application package isn't authentic. It's when it seems soulless. They can be
Mhm.
very sleek words, and they can be, semantically perfect, but there's no drive there. There's no real authentic ideas there. And so those are the students who don't tend to do well in the selection process. And so, we expect every bit of the application package to be your own work, and we expect you to present your authentic self. And that leads to greater outcomes, because if we can understand who you are, then we can better understand how the program can use its resources to meet your needs, to help you to figure out where you want to go. And that's something that can't be AI generated.
Mhm.
The human touch is the center of our program.
No, and I love the word soulless, and I think that is a great descriptor of like what I have seen in some applications and essays. Unfortunately, just I think that I think sometimes students think in the binary of you want to be correct or do it like there's a right and a wrong, and just trying to be authentic is the best, even if it's like, perhaps not the most like technically like perfect essay. Having a authentic essay is
Yes.
going to be way, way better and just like more interesting. When I was on the admission side, it was, just you're reading a lot of applications. You want to be interested in learning more about the person. It should make you want to, I want to sit down across from this person, have a conversation over like a cup of coffee type of thing. Um,
Right, right.
yeah.
So as a part of our high school program, our guided pathway support program team, we review application essays, I would say almost every day, or, at least the majority of the days in the week. I was reviewing a scholarship application, a fly-in program application just before this podcast. And you can always tell those that are AI written, just because they don't, they're almost a little bit too polished. And, we work with so many college partners, and I love it when we have admission officers. We recently had an admission officer from USC speak to our students, to talk about how, you can use AI, but if the essay doesn't make me want to learn more about you as a person, then your essay isn't going to do well. One of my
Hmm.
favorite essays that I remember from this last application cycle was from a student. I mean, it was not grammatically perfect. And I actually, suggested that he leave some of those grammatical imperfections there, because the ideas were so strong. It showed me how he communicated, how the people around him communicated from his small, community in the South. And also the ideas, this idea that, it's great to think outside of the box, but you need to have the discipline to develop the structure of a box before you can think outside of it.
Hmm.
And it was about the power of discipline. And that's what we're looking for. He knocked it out of the park. He did so well with his college applications. And that's where AI just can't compete. It'll be polished, but it's definitely impersonal.
Hmm. No, I completely, completely agree. Um, I'm also curious, just and this is interesting because this is a little bit part of your story. What other what advice or what would you tell students who might be feeling a bit discouraged from applying to scholarships, especially scholarships like like Ron Brown or like Coca-Cola, Questbridge, that are competitive. No, just being like truthful about it. But just, yeah, what would you tell students if they're feeling like, maybe I'm not going to apply for this because it's too competitive.
Right, right, right. So I get this, question all the time, in my work in doing college counseling for students. So I would say, um, I've been a part of some very selective scholarship programs, as a scholarship recipient, and also as someone who's reviewed applications, and also just as a thought partner or ally. And what I've found is within every scholarship community among the winners, there's always a crop of students who did not believe that they would ever win it. So don't take yourself out of the running. The selectivity you can't control. Don't worry about things that are beyond your control. You have to align your experiences and your vision for your career, and the change that you want to make with what this program is looking for. So think deeply about what they've chosen to write on their website and what language they've chosen to use on their application and what supports that they say that they offer students. Don't just rush through those. It isn't a template. They're telling you their culture. And so you need to speak to their culture. So the Hagen Scholarship, absolutely wonderful scholarship for low-income students. It requires students who receive the scholarship to work while they're in college, even though it's a fantastic scholarship and they award, quite a bit of money. And so obviously, here's a scholarship that values, resourcefulness. Show them how you're resourceful now. Show them what you'll do if they support you to continue to be resourceful. That's their culture. They want to know about your resourcefulness. And so don't think that it's cookie cutter. While we do want you to manage your time efficiently and try to recycle those essays as best you can, and try to apply as
Mhm.
many scholarships as you can because your future is on the line. That cost of attendance is only going up at most colleges every year. So we understand that it's a numbers game and you have to get those scholarship applications out there. But if you take the time to really understand what this program wants, whether they want your long-term participation, what they value, are they looking to only support engineers, are they looking for artists, and then look at your experiences and then build your master narrative to show them my experiences and my vision align with what you want. That's the
Mhm.
best thing that you can do. Make your case that you align with their culture, that if they invest in you, that they will accomplish their mission and that you will represent their values.
No, I think that's great. And I think that's a great place to wrap up. My last question is about tips for students. And I think like that's just such a wonderful, just to kind of, double, click on that. Just a great mentality for students who are looking for scholarships, just like looking and applying for the scholarships that are a good fit for you, and really trying to demonstrate that in the application, doing your homework, doing your research on the organization, like that just is going to make you stand out so much more.
Yeah.
This has been really, really great, Kai. I appreciate the time. We have a large number of students who are actively searching for scholarships. I think this will be really great advice. I know we've had some Ron Brown scholars, come through Scholarships 360, and hopefully we'll, just be able to help them navigate the process a little bit more confidently. And for students who didn't know about this program, hopefully they'll do, check you out on a line.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious, where are the best places for students to learn more about the Ron Brown program?
Our website. So if you go to ronbrown.org, you can find information. We're also on social media, every social media platform.
Perfect.
If you search for Ron Brown, you'll find us there. And I'd also like to add one more thing. I also encourage students to deeply research the institutional scholarships that are offered at their target colleges, because those are great opportunities for you to, if you can combine those institutional dollars with outside dollars, then you're less likely to have a financial aid gap. And some of them, so it's tricky because some of them you have to be nominated by a counselor. Some of them, you have to apply separately. But as you are building your college list, if you also take the time to scour that scholarships page to see how you can best position yourself and make sure that you're considered for those institutional scholarships, then it will only help you once you get those financial aid offers and it's time for you to make the most important consumer decision of your young life, which is choosing a college that it's a great academic, social, and financial fit for you.
No, that's a great note to end on. And yeah, a big fan of the merit scholarships that plays such a huge role for students. Well, thank you so much for the time, and yeah, really, 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 really grateful to share more from just your story as well as this incredible program. So thank
Well,
you,
thank
Kai.
you so much for having me.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to another episode of Office Hours with Will Geiger. If you're a student or parent, don't forget to check out app.scholarships360.org, where you can sign up for our free scholarship matching platform. For colleges, we've got solutions to make your work easier, which you can check out at connect.scholarships360.org. And one last thing, if you or someone you know would make a great guest on the show, I'd love to hear from you. You can always reach me by email or on LinkedIn. Until next time, thanks again for listening.